I'm not suggesting it's an easy job. But I think it's quite doable. Front end of a coupe, it wouldn't matter if it's 2 litre or 2.4, but you've got to marry it to a 2 litre rear. Does anyone remember my theory about what I call the platform, which is the floor area and bulkhead and inner wings and rear tubs and boot floor of a coupe and a Spider? Now that theory is that they are the same, but one's shorter than the other. So Spider's shorter, coupe's longer. And the difference is in the rear floor pans. And that is it, really. There's other details that are different, but you know, that was it. And I've mentioned before, well, you could shorten a coupe platform, make it into a Spider to save a Spider that's really bad. You know, we're talking about a Spider that's really, really bad, and you won't be lengthening a Spider to save a coupe, I'm sure. But, you know, just because of the values and, you know, anyway, whatever. There's enough coupe donors out there to sacrifice a few. You know, yeah, you know, you're all going to be chomping at the bit, aren't you? Say, oh, you can't do that, but you can, and perhaps we need to sometimes. So let's have a look in detail at this theory of mine and see if it is practical. Got a coupe here. You might remember this one, the one with the cage in that we were looking at before. It's a good thing to look at because it's got all the sound deadening off the floors so we can see the differences. So I reckon this seatbelt mount here is the telltale, is the sort of datum. So if I measure there to the inner wheel tub, we get about 105 centimetres. There you go, like that. Now that is the same as on the Spider, I've checked it. Now if we measure this sill, this inner sill on the Spider, and there's a joiner there, you see this joins there? And joins the back of the car there. So this turns into that panel, and that one's over the top of that. So if we measure the Spider where it ends here, right there, which is 111 centimetres. So, you know, a metre and a bit, effectively. So they'll put a little cut line there to illustrate what we're doing. So if we look at this floor pan here, if we sort of come up to see that from above, you can see the floor pan here is quite big, and on a Spider it's small. Now, if you remember, I was making them, wasn't I? So if we look at them, we'll see the floor pan I was making, which is there. That's it, isn't it? So that shows how short it is. So that joins there, like under that bit. And this kick here follows that datum round there, round that bit, which also shows us where that has to be shorter. So you can see how much shorter the floor pan is. Like that, which is effectively going to be that, isn't it? Going to be that same amount between there and there. It's going to be that, or you know, pretty much thereabouts. So that's 27. So yeah, time you got that onto that edge, yeah, it's about it, isn't it? I think that's it. I mean, this is going to have to take some better measurements than this when you do it, but this joins onto there. That bit joins there. So on a Spider it's cut through there and joins onto there. So that makes this bit shorter again, you see. So I think if you take these floor pans out, that's effectively where you're shorten it here. Then you'll end up with the length of a Spider, basically. You know, it will become a Spider. All the front floor pans are the same. All the rear's the same. We'll have a look at that in detail. These seat runs are different between coupe and Spider, but you know, that's not really a hardship, is it, to change that? These inner wing tubs are the same, the bulkhead's the same, this is different, that lot's different, but that would be changed. All the A-post stuff's different, but you'd change that. So you're really looking at the front chassis rails, front floors, bulkhead, everything else, up to here, then this being your bit that changes. And I think that's quite doable. So if we have a quick look on the Spider, we'll see what we were looking at here on that one and see what it looks like. We were looking at this being our datum, weren't we, that seatbelt mount. which gives us 105, wasn't it, to that one? There you see. Near as damn it, 105, 106, it's nearly there. I say you need, and then we're looking about 110, 111 to that cut mark, weren't we, there? So that gives us that. That is it. I'm convinced that's all the same. And that's where your length is. Now, obviously, in doing this, you'd have to be pretty, you know, you're going to be taking a lot more measurements. You're going to be doing it on a jig and so on. But I think it's quite doable. I think it's quite workable. And there's our floor pan again, which is going to go in here. So you can see how that fits in there. And there it is. It fits, doesn't it? So that's it. So we can see what we're doing there. And you can see how this is shorter here. You see that joins onto there, much like that other one. But obviously you've got this hole here, so you'd have to let that in. But basically that part there, you know, is going to be the same with these mounts here, these seatbelt mounts and so on. So it's the same thing, but it comes to there. So you'd cut that one down. So I reckon that's quite doable. Now seat rails, I said they were different, didn't I? They are different, those seat rails. So that's different, but it's pretty much the same, you see. But obviously you see this is all different, isn't it? This area is different. So we know that area is different. We know the A-post area is different. We know all that, you know, that's going to be different. But pretty much the same other than that. Bulkhead in the back's different. We don't have a bulkhead, do we, on the coupe? Don't have any of that, but that would join onto it, wouldn't it? You'd let that in. But these, I think, are the same, these tubs. Now, remember, this is a 2.4, so we've got the mounts here up in the top here for the independent rear suspension. So that's different. If you're doing this operation with a 2 litre, you'd be having to use a 2 litre rear clip. You see, that's where it goes. But let's have a look at the front and see what we've got here. So these are what I call landing panels, and these are different between a coupe and a Spider. Now, do you remember a Spider's got a little bonnet, hasn't it? Whereas a coupe's got a massive bonnet that comes all the way over here, whereas the Spider bonnet sort of comes in, you know, just sits in there. So this is different. So these are very, very different. But that edge there is the same all along there. And I know that because I've fitted chassis rails from a 2.4 onto a 2 litre Spider in the back. So from a coupe to a Spider, I've done that. Now that's different. This cross member is different between coupe and Spider. That's different, and this area here is different, how this works. All this area is completely different, and these mounts here. So, you know, all that's going to have to be dealt with. And if it's rusty on the one you've got, you'd have to make them. But it's all quite durable. It's all, you know, I make these, as you've seen, I make them. You know, it depends how bad the Spider you've got is. I mean, this is a 2.4, and it has this vacuum tank, which actually the 2 litre has a vacuum tank as well. But, you know, that's just that bracket. That can be dealt with, can't it? And obviously this has the vacuum pump being a 2.4, not relying just on the inlet manifold vacuum on its own. But anyway, it still has a tank, and the tank goes there. So that's that. So let's have a look at the coupe, at these areas on this coupe, and see what I was on about. So, landing panels, completely different. They were up here, weren't they, like that? So that was that. But that is the same line, isn't it? That's the same line, same up to here. Then all that is different on the coupe, and all that's different, but we've got all these bits the same. All this is different, so you junk all that, which is what I've done before, and all this goes, these landing panels. But you end up with that bit. That's the same, bulkhead's the same, but this plenum is not, and this not, you know, all that lot will have to go. So you've got to unpick a lot of stuff. I'm not suggesting it's an easy job, but I think it's quite doable. You know, to someone that's got enough wit, it's doable. Inner wings, I think, are the same, you know, between both cars. You know, this inner wing area is the same. So you'd salvage that, a lot of that. We were looking at rear tubs, weren't we? Well, they look the same to me. All this area looks the same. I'm sure that's the same length, all that bit. And what we'll do is we'll quickly measure it, shall we, just to be sure. Let's get a sort of datum that we can use between both cars that's fairly easy. So we'll go from there, where that upturn is, to down in here, won't we? Something like that. So we're looking at 29 centimetres there on that bit. Let's have a look on this one, see what we've got there. I reckon it's going to be the same. Yeah, there you go, look, 29. It's the same. So bulkhead, yeah, that's different, but this is all the same. That's the same length, and that's your independent rear, you know, where it mounts up because it's independent. So, as I said, this is different. This area is different. So, if you're using that front end of a coupe, it wouldn't matter if it's 2 litre or 2.4, but you've got to marry it to a 2 litre rear, haven't you? So that would have to be, you'd have to work that out. But it depends what you're doing and why you're doing, if depends what you're doing with it, really, doesn't it? But it's quite workable. The other thing we ought to have a look at is the boot floor, isn't it? So we've got rear chassis rails coming down to here on this joins here, doesn't it, on this panel here. So it goes from the boot floor there and sort of rolls up. Now that's got to take a spare wheel, hasn't it? So I guess if we look at the coupe and see where that ends, so I suppose if we go from there to there, across that spare wheel well, there'd be another little sort of dimension to take, wouldn't it? So that goes 67 centimetres there. Let's just have a look at this one. Looks about the same to me, 67, doesn't it? In that panel does look the same. See how this sort of fits to it there? It curls round there. See, these chassis rails sort of end here, don't they? This sort of stops there, and then it's got this bit on the back. Now that's curved, isn't it, that? That sort of is a curve. Let's have a look at that one, see if it's straight or curved. Looks curved to me, doesn't it? That's curved, that goes to there. That, I reckon, is the same panel. This won't be, because this stops here, and then you have a rear panel out here. So, you haven't got that extension there. So you've got length on the back on the coupe there, haven't you, on this bit, which we haven't got on a Spider, because it ends there. You can see where the bumper irons are, so it ends there, the bodywork ends there. So it's shorter there. But you see, I think these are all the same. You won't have them, because that's to do with the boot, how the thing works, and it won't have that bulkhead. But I mean, all this is the same, all that's the same, all that's the same. So look at these 3 pressings there. Let's have a look at them. So we've got 3 pressings across there and these flutes across there. Let's see what it looks like on this one. Flutes, pressings, 1, 2, 3. I reckon they're the same, don't you? They're underneath this thing, but look, 1, 2, 3. I reckon it's the same thing. I reckon it's exactly the same panel. So, and yeah, I'd say these are the same. The rear tubs won't be. The outer tubs from those outwards won't be, because they'll have to marry up with the coupe and the wheel arches on the coupe rather than the Spider, won't they? And there's that bit there that's longer again, isn't it? Look, you were saying, weren't we? That's longer there, this area. So you've got this extra bit here, haven't you, on the coupe? Oh, let's look at these A-post areas. Have a look at those in there. So our A-posts here, you see, and then that's where your windscreen mounts. Well, that is all going to be very different, and this is going to be different. It's that's the same, but this lot built outwards is different. So if we go around to this one, you see very different treatment for the outer sills. And then if you come that side, you can see all the A-post areas different, and obviously it hasn't got all, this is all different up here, isn't it, where the windscreen goes on. It's all very different, but, that's the difference between Bertone and Pininfarina, how they clothed it. So my theory is this floor, this whole floor area and everything else is made by Fiat, in a Fiat factory somewhere, out of Fiat panels and so on. And then these platforms, a long platform for a coupe, short platform for a Spider, go off to Pininfarina and Bertone accordingly. And that's it. That's how it works, I reckon. So, do you think that's going to work? I suppose we get the angle grinder out and see, haven't we? Start cutting it up. All right, there you go. Enough of that for tonight.